This is disc number 12.
It was more monster than bird. I got a good look at it as it swooped overhead. Its head was tilted so it could fix its eye on us. I estimated the wingspan to be around 40 feet, or about half the length of Mr. Kadam's plane. I strung my bow, drew back an arrow, and shivered as its shrill, high-pitched shriek vibrated through my limbs. My hand shook, and I let the arrow go. I missed. The body of the creature was like a giant eagle. Rows of dense, overlapping metal feathers covered the bird's torso and grew larger along its long, broad wings. Its feathers were about the size of a surfboard. The wingtips were tapered and widely separated. The iron bird beat its wings and spread its tail feathers to help it break and swoop into the sky again. It moved like a raptor. Powerful, muscular legs with razor-sharp talons stretched out to grab us on its second pass. Kishan pushed me face down into the nest so that the bird missed us, but only by inches. Its head looked something like a gull with a stout, longish-hooked beak, but there was an extra hook resting on the upper mandible of its beak, sharp on both sides like a double-edged sword. When one of the birds came closer, it nipped at us, and I heard a metallic shear as the sharp edges of its beak snapped together like a pair of giant scissors. Another came too close, so I zapped it with a lightning bolt. The energy hit the bird on its chest and bounced off, scorching the nest, not a foot from where Kishan was standing.
"Watch it, Kels."
This was not looking good. I shouted, "My lightning bolts just bounce off!"
"Let me try."
He threw the chakram. It hurled through the air in a wide arc past the bird. "Kishan, how do you miss something that big?"
"Just watch."
As the chakram completed its arc and spun back to Kishan, it hit the bird on the return trip and sliced through a metallic wing, making a terrible sound, something like a drill on sheet metal. The bird screamed and fell thousands of feet to the ground below, tearing off branches and tree limbs as it went. The tree shook wildly as it crashed. 3 more birds circled overhead and tried to grab us with knife-like talons or beaks. I knocked another arrow and aimed for the nearest one. The arrow struck the bird right in the chest, but all it did was make it angry. Kishan ducked between some eggs as a bird tried to shish kebab him with a talon.
"Aim for the neck or the eyes, Kelsey."
I shot off another arrow into the neck and a third into the eye. The bird flew off and then fell, spinning like an out-of-control airplane before crashing to the ground. Now they were really mad. More birds arrived. They seemed intelligent and resourceful. One nipped at Kishan, backing him to the edge of the nest. While he was busy there, a second bird reached out and grabbed him with its talons. "Kishan!" I raised my hand and aimed for its eye. This time, the lightning bolt worked. The iron bird shrieked and let Kishan go, dropping him with a thud into the nest. I did the same thing to the other bird, and it took off, calling madly to its flockmates. I raced over to Kishan. "Are you all right?" His shirt was torn and bloody. The bird's talons had raked across both sides of his chest, and he was bleeding freely. He panted.
"It's okay. It hurts. It feels like hot knives pressed against my skin, but it's healing. Don't let them get near you."
The skin around the slices was blistered an angry red. "It looks like their talons are coated with acid, too," I said sympathetically. He sucked in a breath when I lightly touched his skin.
"I'll be fine."
He froze.
"Listen. They are communicating with each other. They're coming back. Get ready to fight."
Kishan stood to distract them while I took a position behind the remaining 2 eggs.
"All things considered, I'd rather have monkeys,"
Kishan shouted. I shivered. "Tell you what, we'll rent King Kong and the birds. Then you can decide," he yelled as he ran from a swooping bird.
Are you asking me on a date? Because if you are, it will definitely give me more incentive to come out of this alive.
Whatever works.
You're on.
He ran across the nest, jumped off the edge, flipped over in mid-air and landed on a tree limb that jutted out. He threw the chakram and it soared into the sky. The sun glinted off the golden disk as it whirled around the tree and sliced through the dozen or so birds circling the top. They split off in every direction and then regrouped. I could almost see them calculating their next maneuver. All at once they dove for us. Shrieking, the flock attacked. I'd once seen a colony of seagulls display mobbing behavior. They all pecked and harassed a man with a sandwich at the beach until he ran away screaming. They were violent, determined, and aggressive. But these birds were worse. The birds ripped limbs off the tree to reach us. More than half of them dove for Kishan, who agilely leapt from branch to branch until he was back with me behind the eggs. Frenzied flapping around the nest blew air in every direction. I felt as if I was caught in a whirlwind. Kishan threw his chakram again and again, cutting off the leg of one bird and slicing the belly of a second before the weapon returned to his hand. I got rid of 2 with arrows through the eyes and blinded 2 more with lightning shots. Kishan shouted,
"Can you keep them off me for a minute, Kels?"
"I think so. Why?"
"I'm going to move the last 2 eggs."
"Hurry!" I experimented and drew back an arrow, infused it with lightning power, and let loose. It hit the bird in the eye and blew its head off. The charred, smoking, headless torso landed with a boom, half on the nest and half dangling over the side. The nest cracked and tilted precariously before settling. The impact shot me into the air as if I'd been on a trampoline, and the momentum dropped me over the edge of the nest. I desperately stretched out to grab the edge as I fell. Rough branches scraped my skin as I struggled to slow my momentum. Finally successful, I threw my arms over the side, but still slipped. Blood trickled down my arm. Gritting my teeth in pain, I dug my fingers in and rammed my feet between the branches to get a foothold. I tore several fingernails and scratched up my legs and arms, but it was worth it. I didn't fall to a horrible death. At least, not yet. Kishan had held on better. He righted himself quickly and headed toward me.
"Hold on, Kels."
Kishan lay on his stomach and stretched out a hand. He grabbed my hands and yanked until I landed on top of him.
"Are you okay?"
he asked. "Yeah, I'm fine."
"Good."
He grinned and had just wrapped his arms around me when he saw something overhead. He put a hand behind my head and another around my waist and rolled several times until we bumped against the back of the nest. We ended up with his body sprawled on top of mine. "Look out!" I screamed. 2 of the birds were leaning in, trying to snap us in half with their metallic beaks. I picked up a broken branch nearby and shoved it into the bird's eye just before it eviscerated Kishan. Then I hit the other one with lightning.
"Thanks."
I grinned, feeling proud of my accomplishment. "Anytime." The nest shifted. The weight of the dead bird hanging off the edge of the nest was too heavy. The bird was falling and taking the nest with it. Kishan grabbed branches on both sides of my head.
"Hold on,"
he shouted. I wrapped my arms around his neck and clung to him as the nest tilted several feet into the air and snapped in half. Half of the nest fell with the dead bird, and the other half, the half we were in, hung precariously from 2 almost sheared-off limbs. My stomach lurched as the nest and everything around it, including the branches holding us, suddenly dropped 3 feet and hit with a bone-jarring bang. 3 of the eggs fell out of the nest and broke on the branches below. We fell into what was left of the nest before rolling to a stop. "Where's the scarf?" I yelled.
There.
The scarf had blown out of the nest and was draped loosely on a broken limb several feet below. It fluttered in the breeze and would probably blow away at any moment.
Kels, hurry. Grab my hand, I'll lower you down so you can reach the scarf.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Go.
He gripped my arm and lowered me. I couldn't believe he had the strength to do it, but he wrapped his other arm around a branch and held the weight of both our bodies with one arm. It still wasn't good enough.